15th August 1947, India woke to a new dawn of freedom. Finally, we were masters of our own destiny after some 200 years of British rule. The job of nation building was now in our own hands. The leaders of independent India had to decide, among other things, the type of economic system most suitable for our nation. A system which would promote the welfare of all rather than a few. Nehru and many other leaders and thinkers of the newly independent India sought an alternative to the extreme versions of capitalism and socialism. They were looking for an economic system which combined the best features of socialism without its drawbacks. In this view, India would be a socialist society with a strong public sector, but also with private property and democracy. The government would plan for the economy, with the private sector being encouraged to be a part of the plan effort. In 1950, the Planning Commission was set up with the Prime Minister as its chairperson. The era of 5-year plans had begun. Let us understand the basic goals of the 5-year plans. The goals of the 5-year plans are growth, modernization, self-reliance, and equity. This does not mean that all the plans have given equal importance to all these goals. Due to limited resources, a choice has to be made in each plan about which of the goals is to be given primary importance. Let us now learn about the goals of planning in some detail. Growth. Growth is an important goal of the 5-year plan. It refers to increase in the country's capacity to produce the output of goods and services within the country. A good indicator of economic growth in the language of economics is steady increase in the gross domestic product or GDP. The GDP is the market value of all the goods and services produced in the country during a year. The GDP of a country is derived from the different sectors of the economy, namely the agricultural sector, the industrial sector, and the service sector. Modernization. Option. Another important goal of the 5-year plan is modernization. To increase the production of goods and services, the producers have to adopt new technology. For example, a farmer can increase the output on the farm by using new seed varieties instead of using the old ones. Similarly, a factory can increase output by using a new type of machine. Adoption of new technology is called modernization. However, modernization does not refer only to the use of new technology, but also to changes in social outlook, such as the recognition that women should have the same rights as men. Self-reliance. An important goal of the 5-year plan is self-reliance. A nation can promote economic growth and modernization by using its own resources or by using resources imported from other nations. The first 7 five-year plans gave importance to self-reliance, which means avoiding imports of those goods which could be produced in India itself. This policy was considered a necessity in order to reduce our dependence on foreign countries, especially for food. It is understandable that people who were recently freed from foreign domination should give importance to self-reliance. Equity. Another important goal of the five-year plan is equity. It is important to ensure that the benefits of economic prosperity reach the poor sections as well, instead of being enjoyed only by the rich. So, in addition to growth, modernization, and self-reliance, equity is also important. Every Indian should be able to meet his or her basic needs, such as food, a decent house, education and healthcare, and inequality in the distribution of wealth should be reduced. Green Revolution was another major reform that took place in agricultural sector. At the time of independence, about 75% of the country's population was dependent on agriculture. Productivity in the agricultural sector was very low because of the use of old technology and the absence of required infrastructure for the vast majority of farmers. India's agriculture widely depends on the monsoon, and if the monsoon fell short, the farmers were in trouble unless they had access to irrigation facilities, which very few had. The stagnation in agriculture during the colonial rule was permanently broken by the Green Revolution. This refers to the large increase in production of food grains resulting from the use of high-yielding variety or HYV seeds, especially for wheat and rice. The use of these seeds required the use of fertilizers and pesticides in the correct quantities, as well as regular supply of water. The application of these inputs in correct proportions is vital. The farmers who could benefit from HYV seeds required reliable irrigation facilities as well as the financial resources to purchase fertilizers and pesticides. As a result, in the first phase of the Green Revolution, approximately mid-1960s up to mid-1970s, the use of HYV seeds was restricted to the more affluent states such as Punjab, Andhra Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu. Further, the use of HYV seeds primarily benefited the wheat growing regions only. In the second phase of the Green Revolution, mid-1970s to mid-1980s, the HYV technology spread to a larger number of states and benefited more variety of crops. The spread of Green Revolution technology enabled India to achieve self-sufficiency in food grains. We no longer had to be at the mercy of America or any other nation for meeting our nation's food requirements. If substantial amount of agricultural produce is sold in the markets by the farmers, the higher output can make the difference to the economy. A good proportion of the rice and wheat produced during the Green Revolution period, available as marketed surplus, was sold by the farmers in the market. As a result, the price of food grains declined relative to other items of consumption. The low-income groups, who spend a large percentage of their income on food, benefited from this decline in relative prices. The Green Revolution enabled the government to procure a sufficient amount of food grains to build a stock, which could be used in times of food shortage. While the nation had immensely benefited from the Green Revolution, the technology involved was not free from risks. One such risk was the possibility that it would increase the disparities between small and big farmers, since only the big farmers could afford the required inputs, thereby reaping most of the benefits of the Green Revolution. Moreover, the HYV crops were also more prone to attack by pests, and the small farmers who adopted this technology could lose everything in a pest attack. Fortunately, these fears did not come true because of the steps taken by the government. The government provided loans at a low interest rate to small farmers and subsidized fertilizers so that the small farmers could also have access to the needed inputs. Since the small farmers could obtain the required inputs, the output on small farms equaled the output on large farms in the course of time. As a result, the Green Revolution benefited the small as well as rich farmers. Changes that have taken place in industry and trade since independence. 5 year plans place a lot of emphasis on industrial development as it provides employment which is more stable than the employment in agriculture. For the economy to grow, there was a need to expand the industrial base with a variety of industries from an already shrinked base. Due to lack of capital with Indian industrialists and small market for the goods, it was difficult to attract private sector into industries. It is principally for these reasons that the state had to play an extensive role in promoting the industrial sector. In addition, the decision to develop the Indian economy on socialist lines led to the policy of the state controlling the commanding heights of the economy, as the second 5 year plan put it. This meant that the state would have complete control of these industries that were vital for the economy. The policies of the private sector would have to be complementary to those of the public sector, with the public sector leading the way. Industrial Policy Resolution 1956 or IPR 1956. In accordance with the goal of the state controlling the commanding heights of the economy, the Industrial Policy Resolution of 1956 was adopted. This resolution formed the basis of the second 5 year plan, the plan which tried to build the basis for a socialist pattern of society. This resolution classified industries into three categories. The first category comprised industries which would be exclusively owned by the state. The second category consisted of industries in which the private sector would supplement the efforts of the state sector, with the state taking the sole responsibility for starting new units. The third category consisted of the remaining industries which were to be in the private sector. Although there was a category of industries left to the private sector, the sector was kept under state control through a system of licenses. No new industry was allowed unless a license was obtained from the government. This policy was used for promoting industry in backward regions. It was easier to obtain a license if the industrial unit was established in an economically backward area. In addition, such units were given certain concessions such as tax benefits and electricity at a lower tariff. The purpose of this policy was to promote regional equality. License to expand production was given only if the government was convinced that the economy required a larger quantity of goods. Institution. For For the Indian economy to grow, there was a strong need to have a sound trade policy. Let us try to explore the trade policy followed by India since independence. In the first seven plans, trade was characterized by what is commonly called an inward-looking trade strategy. Technically, this strategy is called import substitution. This policy aimed at replacing or substituting imports with domestic production. For example, instead of importing vehicles made in a foreign country, industries would be encouraged to produce them in India itself. In this policy, the government protected the domestic industries from foreign competition. Protection from import took two forms: tariffs and quotas. Tariffs are a tax on imported goods. They make imported goods more expensive and discourage their use. Quotas specify the quantity of goods which can be imported. The effect of tariffs and quotas is that they restrict imports and therefore protect the domestic firms from foreign competition. The policy of protection is based on the notion that industries of developing countries are not in a position to compete against the goods produced by more developed economies. It is assumed that if the domestic industries are protected, they will learn to compete in the course of time. Industrial development. Let us study the impact that government policies had on industrial development. The achievements of India's industrial sector during the first seven plans are impressive indeed. The proportion of GDP contributed by the industrial sector increased in the period from 11.8% in 1950-51 to 24.6% in 1990-91. The rise of the industry's share of GDP is an important indicator of development. The 6% annual growth rate of the industrial sector during the period is commendable. No longer was Indian industry restricted largely to cotton textiles and jute. In fact, the industrial sector became well diversified by 1990, largely due to the public sector. The promotion of small-scale industries gave opportunities to those people who did not have the capital to start large firms to get into business. Protection from foreign competition enabled the development of indigenous industries in the areas of electronics and automobile sectors, which otherwise would not have developed. However, some economists are critical of the performance of many public sector enterprises, which had led to monopoly, which was no longer required, and private players should be allowed to compete with them. They also argued that the state could get out of areas which the private sector can manage, and the government may concentrate its resources on important services which the private sector cannot provide. Also, many public sector firms incurred huge losses but continued to function because it is difficult to close a government undertaking, even if it is a drain on nation's limited resources. There were cases of misuse of license Raj, and due to strict compliance, more time was spent by industrialists in trying to obtain a license or lobby with the concerned ministries rather than on thinking about how to improve their products. The protection from foreign competition is also being criticized on the ground that it continued even after it proved to do more harm than good. Due to restrictions on imports, the Indian consumers had to purchase whatever the Indian producers produced. This monopoly was a disincentive for the producers to improve the quality of their goods. Owing to all these conflicts and many more, economists called for a change in our policy. This, along with other problems, led the government to introduce a new economic policy in 1991.